sexual violence. Well, it remains a serious and deeply troubling issue in our society, with many girls and women affected by crimes that leave lasting physical and emotional, also psychological trauma. In recent years, there have been growing calls for stronger protection for victims, faster investigation, and greater accountability for perpetrators. However, recent developments involving a social media personality have also brought attention to concerns about false rape accusations. Now, while that is a big conversation, and sexual violence still remains a grave reality that must be confronted. False accusations, when they occur, can also cause significant harm, damaging reputations and complicating the pursuit of justice. And this highlights the need for a system that protects victims, ensures accountability, and upholds fairness and due process.
This conversation goes beyond the headlines. It speaks to the kind of society we want to build, one where victims feel safe to speak, where justice is served, and where the truth is protected. It also raises important questions about the role of the law institutions and society in preventing abuse, supporting victims, and ensuring fair and thorough investigations.
Joining us this morning to help unpack these issues are Kabir Akimbulu, a legal practitioner with expertise in criminal justice, and we also are joined by Jane Ilu, a child advocate who works closely with vulnerable children and families to protect their rights and welfare.
Thank you both for joining us. I'll start with, how should we start with, Mazino?
Ladies first, they say.
Ladies first. Now, sexual violence cases appear to be rising in visibility and, of course, in reporting. From your professional perspective, how serious is the situation? And what patterns are we observing and seeing now?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, sexual abuse in Nigeria is not just the trending topic as we're seeing now. It's a national emergency that affects both children, affects families, and even countries themselves. So as a child advocate and someone who has been a victim herself, I've seen firsthand what abuse does to children, how it affects their self-esteem, it affects their confidence, it interrupts their education, and also it leaves long-lasting trauma that never goes away. Now, so if we're talking about rising incidents, now the question should really be, are cases increasing, or are people now finding the courage to come out to share the abuse or to tell their stories about sexual violence? Because a lot of persons do not report abuse, especially children, because they're afraid that they might not get the justice they need. And some are afraid because they're going to be judged and stigmatized. So we, as a country, should also look for ways to protect children, protect people, because it is not only children that suffer sexual abuse. Both men, women, young and old do suffer sexual abuse. Now it is left for us to put in places safe spaces that allow people to come out to share their stories or report abuse. It is left for us to put in places proper investigations, proper teams that can investigate these cases, and also to put places that can also support psychological healing for these victims. Because sexual abuse does not just affect a person, it affects the entire country as a whole.
Jane, thank you very much. Mr. Kabir, let's come to you now. Now, you've noted what she has said. These cases seem to be, maybe they are being reported more often now. Now, from your experience, from a legal point of view, are you experiencing a spike in the amount of people who are bold enough to come out and talk about their experience when it comes to sexual violence?
Well, if you ask me, there is no spike. Sexual abuse has always been there, and people have been committing these atrocities for ages, from time immemorial. Unfortunately, people are afraid to report incidences of rape or sexual abuses and the likes and harassment, whether in workplace. It has been in workplace, in schools, in tertiary institutions, even in primary and the rest of them. You know, it happens everywhere. You know, there's workplace harassment, there's sexual harassment in schools, there is sexual harassment in homes, there are family relation harassment, there is social gathering harassment, there is trust harassment. You know, some of these harassment come out of this. Maybe you have trusted somebody so much, then some of these things arise or arose out of carelessness of the parents. However, is it that the question needs to be asked? Is it that there is spike, or is it that people are more enlightened now? I think the emergence of social media has helped in the fight against this harassment, or in the people coming out to come and say, oh, this is what happened to me, the enlightenment, the education, and so on and so forth, the information that are not restricted. However, over the years, in criminology, that's what we call victimless offenses. They are what we call, that's what we call victimless offense. Rape is one of the victimless offenses that we have. Now, in rape, you know, the people rape, nobody complains. You understand? It happens every day. It does not mean that it was not happening, that's why there are no victims or there are no complainants. But because people are afraid of that stigmatization, there is attached, that's shame. There is attached with that act, so they keep quiet, they don't talk at times. And again, the way society looks at some of these things makes it to be difficult. But over time, people are coming out to talk. That is why you see it's looking as if there is spike in the number of rape cases. However, we need, you know, virile legal tools, legal machineries, or ways or procedures to bring the victims or the perpetrators of this heinous crime to justice or to book. However, some states have gone in the lead. Places like Ekiti State, they have gone ahead. Lagos State have gone ahead. They have a shame register where they register, you know, sexual offenders. They put their name there, and it is displayed everywhere that this person is a sexual offender. This is what is done and all that. And I think the punishment there is life imprisonment, which is, you know, enough detraction. However, the security agents, you know, they have a lot of roles to play here. Because as a legal practitioner myself, I know that out of every 10 rape cases, about 8 to 9 will fail. They will not be able to sustain conviction because of poor investigation and bad prosecution. So if the investigation is not properly done, you cannot secure any conviction.
Okay, go ahead, Inam, please.
I'm curious to know, I think some of the questions, I had a few questions and you answered them, which I think for me was brilliant. So it's safe to say there is what you call a shame register which is for sex offenders, and then there's life imprisonment. Those were the two things that I wanted to find out. Now, you mentioned there that 8 out of 10, you tend to perhaps get convictions or no convictions. I don't remember what you said. But my question is, the evidence that substantiates it, can you enlighten me from a law standpoint, what exactly is surmountable evidence that leads to a conviction in situations like this?
Yes, you know, rape is one of the offenses that needs corroboration as a matter of law. There is corroboration as a matter of practice, there is corroboration as a matter of law, but as a corroboration as a matter of law and as a matter of practice, there is corroboration in law of rape. You must be able to say, oh, he raped me. The court will be interested in seeing other evidence out of your testimony. You have come out to say, oh, this man raped me. Now, the judge or the court is interested in knowing whether there is a neighbor who witnessed it, who heard you shouting, or who could see you when that thing happened, or whether you reported to somebody immediately thereafter, or whether you just kept quiet. Where there are no corroborative evidence and there is no strong and compelling and convincing evidence enough, the offender is going to go scot-free. This is the problem we have with offenses of rape. Because the evidence has also taught that sometimes people are taught to lie against someone in order to implicate him, in order to criminalize him. Whether it's your, it's your boss in the office that insists on strictness or in performance of duties according to law without bending rules. You to, set him up. Whether your lecturer, whether you are not doing well in the subject, you may want to set him up. Or whether some people don't like the face of certain persons, they may use you to set him up. You understand? That is why we are seeing high places where people raise allegations of rape against their bosses or principals or colleagues. At the end of the day, they withdraw the case from court and you begin to doubt it. So the law requires corroboration. There is a particular case where one man was arrested and tried to court for. I'm trying to let you know what corroboration means. He was charged to court for raping a particular person. When there was no corroboration direct, now the lady gave evidence that, the victim gave evidence, he raped me and so on and so forth. And there was nobody who could be there to say anything. But a neighbor came to give evidence that the lady used to sell banana. But on leaving, that man called him to buy banana, and on leaving his premises, she saw the lady with a gloomy face. And the court, concluded that somebody you have bought banana with will be happy ordinarily. So if he's living with a gloomy face and so sad, then it means it's possible that man has really raped him. And the court agreed that there's a corroborative evidence
Mr. Kabir,
to convict the man.
Mr. Kabir, sorry, it sounds a little bit, for the lack of a better word, no, not confusing, a little bit of an elementary argument, if I can say so respectfully. And I say this because, are you basically telling me, and I'm saying this because we will then get to the false accusations, right? It sounds a bit, there are so many gray areas in the way in which we implicate a sex offender, especially if you are telling me that the conviction lies primarily on someone being an eyewitness. Can I ask and say, as we are right now in Nigeria, have we not gotten to the point where scientifically it can be proven if a person was raped or not? Because if we are relying solely on a corroboration, then there would still be a very, very big gap and problem in how we substantiate if a person is guilty of the crime or not. I'm asking this, for instance, things like rape kits, things that need to be assessed from a scientific dimension that proves if a person is guilty or not. Do we have those in Nigeria right now?
We have it from time immemorial. In fact, as a matter of when I talk of corroboration, that is one instance. It does not necessarily mean it must be an eyewitness corroboration. It may be some material part, for instance, where you can get the, the undies of the ladies involved, that you can see that it was torn, and then you can get laceration, a picture of laceration on the body of the lady or of the man. Those things can be taken. You get medical report that shows. But some of the time, the medical practitioners may not go deep to examine this. I have seen a particular case when that man was
Mr. Kabir, before you give that example, Mr. Kabir, my apologies, before you give that example, we also have Jane who would like to ask specific questions here. Now, let's also remember that just from last week, there was the case of Mirabel, the girl who came out to tell that she was raped. However, it's being found out that it was all a lie. Now, the implications there are two victims on this side. Sometimes the victim is actually a person who has been raped. Other times the victims might be people who are being falsely accused. So, Jane, we are seeing this dimension here now, taking away the stigma where people are no longer ashamed to tell that these things have happened to them. Instead, people are now boldly telling, not just boldly telling, but also, well, being mendacious in whatever it is they're saying. They're not telling the truth. How do you see this? How do you balance this dimension that we're seeing currently, Jane?
Okay, first of all, it's pretty amazing that people can finally boldly tell their stories, because in the past, like I said, there are a lot of people have been ashamed of coming out to mention that they've been sexually abused. An example is myself seated here. And then recently, due to social media visibility and awareness, so a lot of people tend to come out now to share their stories. And now, from the recent incidents that occurred where someone actually gave a false story or false accusation of being sexually abused, and I see a lot of people including influencers, coming out to say majority of the time women are not sexually abused, but they just come out to cook up stories and then to accuse people, probably people they don't like. But I want to say this. Majority of the time, sexual abuse reports are not false. Yes, there are incidences where there have been false accusations. Yes, and Nigeria does not have the statistics or number of abuses that are false. Yet they do happen, but I've not really seen statistics that says this is the particular number of cases that have been reported that are false. But global data has it that at least 2 to 10% of cases that have been reported have later came out to be false. But this does not erase the fact that the number that is less shouldn't overshadow the one that is higher, because this will make some people to come out and say, okay, someone came out to say I was sexually abused. Are you sure? Is it true? Then the solution to this now would be that, okay, there are already legal ways or methods put in place to tackle sexual abuse. But then the question is that of implementation. Are these laws being implemented correctly? Are they being implemented when there's when a case comes or when someone comes to report a case? Do the law enforcers actually come out?
Jane, let me help you there for a second. Jane, let me help you there for a second. Do people trust the system enough to say, yes, I will go out and report? I want us to use a practical sample here. Now, you just noted that you are a person, you've experienced this yourself. I want you to talk us through the experience of actually, well, not the actual experience, but the experience of being someone who's a survivor in a society where these kinds of instances are stigmatized. Hearing the story of Mirabel, from when you heard it, from when it was believable to when it fell apart to being a, prevarication, tell us what you, as a survivor, felt in those instances through the entire process of that story making social media rounds.
Okay, as a survivor, I've really seen a lot of cases. I've seen a lot of things, so I no longer make judgment impulsively. I no longer see stories, or when people come out to share their stories, I no longer just attach empathy or emotions to it before making the decisions. Yes, when she came out to share her story, it was believable. People actually accepted that, okay, something like this happened to this person. But then it turned out to be lies. And this has a lot of effect on millions of other people who will be willing to come out to share their stories, because they won't be believed. A lot of them, they don't have evidence to show that, okay, this happened to me. Because someone who was desperate has already weakened that trust that people, because majority of the time, society actually attaches emotion and empathy to cases like this. And now it is worse because someone has actually made it seem like victims are lying. And it's really going to have a lot of effects on millions of people who are willing to come out to tell their stories.
Now, Doctor, let me come to you from a legal practitioner and a standpoint. What's your take on this situation, of course, and the fabricated accusations against the gentleman with regards to rape? And secondly, are there any implications for falsely accusing someone of rape?
Yes, you can be charged for giving false, false information to police. You understand? So if that is the case, then the law will take its course, and I will expect the police or the law enforcement agents to do something in this particular case, so that the person who has come out to lie should be, made to face the wrath of the law, so that it can discourage others from doing such a thing to just come out and implicate people for no just reason, so that it will not have impact on the people who may justly have a reasonable ground or who have been actually harassed or raped. So this will go a long way. But if nothing is done to this particular case, if the victim or the person who lied is not made to face the wrath of the law, it's going to have a very serious impact negatively, just like Jane has said there. It is just the truth of the matter. However, some of these things, there are a lot of different types of laws. There's defilement of idiots, like all these mad people, those who sleep with them, there's a different law. If you defilement of minor, you have to, these two cases, there must be corroboration and they must be prosecuted within 1 year. If it is not done within 1 year, the criminal or the suspect has escaped justice forever. So there are a lot of issues if we go deeper.
Jane, regarding this instance, how have organizations attended to it? We've heard social media and it's been very loud, individuals giving their own takes, people themselves being victimized for taking sides. But what about the NGOs? What about the systems that are in place to help victims, or maybe instances to look into these instances? How have they reacted so far? Are you a member of any of these, and what are your plans?
Okay, well, just like it's usually done, when cases are reported like this, many NGOs tend to request for evidence, or immediately a case is reported, maybe it happens between 24 to 73 hours, the person will be taken to the clinic to get samples to be used as evidence. So I believe that organizations don't just apply empathy, like I said, or emotions to cases like this. So they also request for evidence so that people are not falsely accused, just like it happened now. Although we still know that the majority of cases reported are usually true. So we do all we can, and other organizations do all they can to ensure that justice is served for both the vulnerable, for the accused, and also the victims, and not just focusing on the victim alone.
Well, Jane, would like to say thank you very much for being bold enough not just to keep your experience to yourself, but actually to be one of the few people who comes out to do something about it, have a movement about it, and help people who might be in such instances. Thank you very much for all the efforts you've put, regardless of the experience that you have had. And Barrister Kabero, thank you very much for giving us the legal background to the instances here. We'll look forward to having you back inside of Lagos with your people. Leave our Abuja people alone. Come back to us here. We like having you live in the studio while we say hi to everybody in the Abuja studios. Gentleman, lady, thank you very much for being with us on this conversation.
It's a pleasure.